अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तन्न विदुः सुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः।
Gurubhyo Namaha. We have already gone through the discourse on the verses 16 and 17 of the chapter 4. Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, of renunciation of action. The essence of these verses from the translation and commentary by Maharshi Ji. And today I want to share some knowledge from Maharshi's chapter Karma and the Art of Being from the Science of Being book. The whole title is Science of Being and Art of Living by Maharshi Ji. Here I won't go through the whole thing, the whole chapter, but I will try to take the essence which will be useful for us in addressing the concerns about karma and bringing this expansion of the knowledge. And in essence, this will be karma in relation to transcendence. That means how transcendence can affect the karma and make it better and bring fulfillment and freedom. And here when Maharshi Ji says the art of being, that means knowing how to be the transcendent, how to be the being. Being here is the self. And then perform all actions situated in the being or from that level. Here Maharshiji mostly speaks entirely on only transcendental consciousness, and he doesn't really touch the cosmic consciousness and the God consciousness in this book. But we will add on these elements as needed. Now let me read the translation of these two verses, 16 and 17 again. Verse number 16. What is action and what is inaction? Even the wise are bewildered here. I shall expound to you that action, knowing which you will be freed from evil. And verse number 17 says, action indeed should be understood. Wrong action should also be understood, and inaction should be understood as well. Unfathomable is the course of action. Now, as I speak from karma and the art of being, you might feel, that some things are being repeated, but try to connect and understand the subtleties of this knowledge, because the knowledge is continuously expanding and being known in the subtlest aspects. Here, the philosophy of karma is a simple philosophy of action and reaction. As we sow, so shall you reap, indicating that every action that one performs has its results or reaction for the doer and for the surroundings. Now, this word karma is a term which has its varied meanings according to the context, such as action, simple action, force of action, fruit of action, or the experience of the action, the impressions of the action, etc. And generally in the West, it is associated with bad action and the results of bad action. So when you say karma, they always refer to as something bad. But in reality, the word karma has no evaluation of good or bad, because it simply pertains to action or activity. So if you say good karma, it means good action, and if you say bad karma, it means bad action. But karma itself means action. And again, it truly has no evaluation of good or bad. So we understand that when one thinks, the process of thinking is the performance of action of thinking. And similarly, speaking, acting, behaving, or experiencing something are all different levels of performance of action. So we can broadly say that there are actions coming out of mind, that is manasika, born of mind, which are the thoughts, and then there are actions born of speech, which is called vachaka. So there are the words and then the speech, and then there are actions born of karmendriyas. So these 5 faculties of action, the karmendriyas, are referred to as vak tattva, which is a speech where voice becomes the tattva, and then the pani tattva from the hands, which is referred to as grasping and doing things with hands, and pada tattva, where their actions are coming from the feet, and you see the activities of walking, running, so on and so forth. And then there is the payu tattva, where the action of excretion and the organ is the anus. And then there is the upastha tattva, finally. Here the action is procreation and the genital organs are the media. Many think that the subtle thoughts and the subtle silent speech, these are not actions, but they're all actions because actions can be from gross to the subtlest. So even the subtlest thought and the silent speech, they are actions. So then we understand that every thought, whether it is very subtle or gross, and every word, whether it is spoken or it is silent, and every action produces waves of influence in the surrounding atmosphere. Here there is an analogy, an example given. When we throw a stone in a pond, the stone sinks but leaves waves in motion on the surface. And these waves travel until they reach the shore, where they strike again the sand particles and produce an influence on them, either by pushing them away or bringing them into the pond. So we see that the influence is everywhere, all over the pond and also on the shore. And this is how the action produces reaction, influencing the surroundings and producing effects in the doer and also in the surroundings. Now further, the quality of the influence depends on the quality of action, and the degree of reaction spreading in the surroundings depends on the strength of the action performed. And here it is also important to understand that behavior is also action, because behavior involves thinking, speaking, and experiencing. So one should be wary of one's behavior too, because it produces the same effects of the karma. Now let us see how far the influence of an action spreads. Here, if we take the example of a pond, then the influence of this wave of action, however small, extends over the whole pond. Similarly, the vibrations set forth by the performance of an action travel around the doer, striking against everything in the surroundings. Then it travels far and wide. And how far and wide it goes? Maharishi says, these vibrations strike against everything on earth, on the moon, the sun, and the stars, and keep on traveling in the entire field of the universe, influencing everything that they come across. How much influence they create and depends on the quality of the action and the force of this action. So now we have seen that these vibrations set forth by this action have gone to very distant, have gone far and wide. Now a reaction is being created. And how is the reaction? This reaction created by the striking of these vibrations against different things in the universe travel back to the doer as a rubber ball thrown against a wall bounces back on the player. So obviously, the reaction returns to the doer more quickly from the nearby surroundings, but it takes a longer time to come back from a great distances. For example, if you say a word, by saying this word, you are producing vibrations around you. Then these vibrations go out and strike against a tree and produce some influence and return to the doer. Then they go and strike against a mountain and then again they return the reaction to the speaker. Then they strike the moon, and then this takes much longer time, and then they strike the sun, and then this takes even much longer time. So like this, there is the stars and the heavens which might take millions of years to reach to come back, the reaction to come back. So here we begin to understand that for the influence of an action to reach those far distant stars in the galaxies and to return to the doer will take millions of years. So here it's important to understand that every karma performed by the doer has an influence in the entire cosmos. And in return, the doer is influenced by the deed performed by him. Now, a question arises as to how can the fruit of an action reach the doer after thousands or millions of years? We know the life of a man is only several years, perhaps 100 years. And how does this reaction of the karma come back to the doer when he is no longer in this life? So here Maharshiji says, if the action performed now has the influence for the doer and it will reach the doer in 1,000 years, then that influence will reach that soul wherever in the universe it may be. And for those who do not understand the philosophy of rebirth and continuity of life after death, will not be able to understand this philosophy of karma. Now, as long as the soul is not liberated, as long as the individual soul has not merged itself into cosmic existence, so long will the individuality be held by the soul in whatever world or whatever body it may be. The individual will continue to exist as an individual and will continue to receive the fruits of the karma that he has done in the past. And that past can be thousands of years, or even, as Maharshiji is saying here, could be millions of years. So it is important to understand here when Maharshiji says, whatever world or whatever body it may be, still the effect of the karma keeps reaching. So when a man is liberated and when the individuality has merged into cosmic existence, then this influence of karma is done. Again, in this karma, the reaction or the fruit of action unfailingly reaches the doer, just as a calf reaches its own mother in a herd of 1,000 cows. So again, even if there is a large number of cows, thousands of cows in the herd, the calf knows the mother and will go directly to the mother. Just like that, when a letter is addressed to a man, it will be continuously being redirected to wherever the man is. Even if the man is traveling all over the world, somehow or the other, it keeps on getting redirected until it reaches that person. And this is why the proverb, as you sow, so shall you reap. Now let us get to the next point here, where it is said, none other than himself is responsible for a man's happiness or suffering. If a man enjoys, he enjoys out of his own doings. If a man suffers, he suffers out of his own doings. So again, whatever a man is, it is the result of his own past. If he is happy, it is the result of good doings in the past. It is the result of his having produced good, happy, and harmonious vibrations in the atmosphere in the past by his virtuous deeds. Similarly, if a man is suffering in the present, it is a result of his own actions, which had at one time spread an influence of misery, ill health, and suffering in the atmosphere. The next point that comes up is man becomes a carrier of the good or bad karma of other people. Again, a person becomes the carrier of the good or bad karma of other people. We generally see that if a man seems to be good to some and bad to others, he could not be all good, or he would be good to everyone. He could not be all bad, because if he is all bad, he would be bad to everyone. We know that there is some good and some bad in each person until they become enlightened. So again, taking this statement, the man becomes the carrier of the good or bad karma of other people. Here, if he is the carrier of good to you, he comes and brings happiness. The same person the next day may become a means of unhappiness to you. He is creating unhappiness when he becomes the carrier of your bad deeds, and he brings joy to you when he becomes the carrier of the influence of your good actions. So here the important message is understanding these laws of karma. When misery comes, we do not blame others, and when happiness comes, we should for all time maintain equanimity, which is the state of harmony in divine nature. Again, when misery comes, we do not blame others, because these are just the carriers of the good or bad karma for us. And when happiness comes, we should for all time maintain equanimity. And the next point in the philosophy of karma is one should always be intent on being good and doing good. Many times it is very difficult to know really what is good and what is bad, because this good and bad can be governed by a society, by the laws of the government or the laws of the country, and what is good in one place may not be so good in another. So here Maharshi Ji says, if you want to know more of what is good and bad, one should study the scriptures of one's own religions. It doesn't matter which religion you belong, you study the scripture of your own religion so that you understand at least what is good and bad according to the scripture. Sometimes it may be found that the statements in the scriptures appear contradictory. This is quite possible because all these values that are being set are in the relative field of life, and they change according to the time, the circumstances, the surroundings. So what is good during this period of time may not be so good 20 years from now or 100 years from now. But still, a great deal of wrong would be prevented if one follows the scriptures even according to one's limited understanding. It is better to follow them than not follow them at all. So where can we find what is absolute right and what is absolute wrong? So we have already seen in the last discussion that this cannot be determined in the relative field of life, and it is only being in cosmic existence, in the cosmic state of consciousness and God consciousness, then one knows fully what is right and wrong. And besides, we have already understood that one cannot fathom the whole influence of karma. It is beyond the scope of human mind. And then in this case, who can say what is right and what is wrong with this individual mind? So here Maharshiji says, it is important to adjust the whole stream of life in such a way that every action performed by the doer is naturally a good and right action. Here we understand that the whole cosmic process of evolution is carried on by the laws of nature, the innumerable laws of nature or the Prakriti Dharma, which ultimately are based on the cosmic law or the Vishwa Dharma. And here is the value of the transcendence, which is gained by transcendental meditation. Here the mind of the individual can be brought in tune with the transcendental absolute pure consciousness, and this is the plane of the cosmic law. Now let us try to understand karma in relation to being. Karma is based on conscious mind, and we already know that being is unmanifest in its nature and the karma is manifested. And it is the karma which makes being manifest. So naturally here the being and the karma are opposed because being is unmanifested and karma is manifest, and it is temporary and perishable, whereas being is eternal and absolute. So by virtue of karma, the pure consciousness of being is transformed to conscious mind. So this being, which is in unity, becomes diversified and creating multiplicity in this one unity. So here we clearly understand being is the source of karma. So from the being, the source of the karma is coming, actions are coming. So in this art of being, even though karma by nature is opposed to being, karma itself is brought to the level of being. So when both karma and being are maintained at the level of the mind, then this is the art of being and the art of karma simultaneously. So here karma and being find their fulfillment simultaneously, and this happens with the regular practice of transcendence. We have understood from the previous verses that the nature of the mind is overshadowed by the experience. Again, the nature of the mind is overshadowed by the experience, and the doer is overshadowed by his doing. The thinker is overshadowed by his thoughts, and this overshadowing of the essential nature of the mind is said to be the binding influence of action or karma. So with this practice of transcendence, then the mind of the doer is fully infused with the value of being, and the doing fails to overshadow the nature of the doer. So the doer, the one who is performing the actions, then maintains his being. He maintains his essential nature, which is the being, and then this performance of action is done in such a way that it fails to overshadow the nature of the doer. And this is how the doer is said to remain unbound by the doing, and the action is said to not to bind the doer. Now we have seen that how one can remain separate from activity and not bound by the activity when one reaches the cosmic consciousness and further the God consciousness. Then one is completely unbound. Not only unbound to the action, but not also unbound to the fruits of action. So here, this art of transcendence, the art of being, and the philosophy of karma not only deals with the right and wrong and the far-reaching influence of action, but also gives the technique to rise above the binding influence of karma. And all this happens because the mind is infused with the power of being. The next important point is the state of action, whether the action is weak or strong. The strength of any action primarily depends upon the strength of thought. And we have seen that when the source of thought comes within the conscious capacity of the mind, then the thought force becomes infinitely great. So this shows that if one wants to make the action forceful and strong, then it is important to direct one's attention to the source of thinking, which is the field of being. And again, when the mind is infused with the power of being, then the creativity of the mind is infinitely great, and at the same time, very little energy is expended. And very powerful actions can be performed expending less energy or very little energy to bring the desired fruits. Again, this karma or action from the level of being, performed from the level of being or at the level of being, has infinite value. Obviously, it is done at the least expense of one's energy, and the result is the maximum for the doer and for the world. The doer is enjoying the results and living in the plane of being, and he remains ever free from the binding influence of karma. And this is the skill in action which Bhagavan Krishna has spoken earlier, where you draw the mind within, let it reach the field of transcendental being, and while returning, think of doing the action and come out to perform the action. Finally, the purpose of life is to be in bliss consciousness. And the whole purpose is to evolve us to the eternal state of liberation. Accomplishing, achieving, and enjoying the maximum in life, and doing the most good to oneself and to others, while rising to a state of eternal freedom, is the way of individual life. So this philosophy of karma teaches us how, by doing the karma of taking our attention to the field of transcendental being, we can fulfill our life's purpose and play our part in the cosmic purpose of evolution. Besides, when karma is done by the mind which is not practicing this transcendence and which has not experienced the being, then it is motivated by selfish desires, which may or may not be right for the doer, may or may not be right for the entire universe. Certainly, this mind, which is not on the level of the cosmos, will be motivated by selfishness, and the actions will not be absolutely right for the doer or for the universe. And such a karma further produces a strain on the functioning of the natural laws, conducting the process of evolution of all beings. Further, such a karma, when it does not have this experience of the being, is weak, and it needs greater effort for its accomplishment and brings great tension to the individual life and the surroundings. And finally, it binds the mind. This action binds the mind, and the mind remains bound by this karma and by its fruits in all time to come until one is liberated. Here I finally conclude by saying that one should practice the art of transcendence. Just do this every day, keep transcending, gather this intellectual knowledge, and keep evolving and doing the best you can do and enjoy the life. Because if we are not on this level, then everything else is unfathomable. The karma, the effects of the karma, the fruits of the karma, both for yourself, your family, and for the world. So here I end. Jai Gurudev, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu.